In the bustling kingdom of Auravelle, nestled between enchanted forests and mountains that whispered to the stars, lived a clockmaker named Eliot. He was not famous. He was not noble. He lived a quiet life, making intricate clocks, winding springs and gears from morning to night, and always knew the time. Eliot was alert, sharper than most. He could predict the changing weather by how the wind touched his skin. He could solve puzzles in seconds, track footsteps on a cobbled street, and count falling raindrops as they splashed. But despite this, Eliot felt hollow. He often stood in his shop, hands still, eyes lost in the tick-tocking symphony of his creations, wondering, I know everything around me, but do I know me? He couldn't describe it. His mind was fast, his body strong, but sometimes, when the world grew quiet and he sat under the stars, there was a haunting silence within him, like a door he could never open. One evening, as twilight painted the skies lavender, a mystérieuse visiteur arrived. She was wrapped in robes that shimmered like moonlight and carried no shadow. Her name was Mirana. She walked into Eliot's shop, not to buy a clock, but to leave one. This, she said, placing a clock made of transparent crystal on his counter, is no ordinary clock. It keeps not the time of this world, but the rhythm of consciousness. Eliot laughed. That's a beautiful riddle, my lady. But what does that mean? She didn't answer. She simply said, wind it, but only when you're ready to see what lies beyond knowing. And just like that, she vanished, her silhouette dissolving into stardust. The crystal clock sat on Eliot's shelf for weeks, its gears unmoving, silent, still. Every time he reached to wind it, something held him back. Fear? Pride? He wasn't sure, until one rainy night. Lightning cracked across the sky like the earth, remembering something ancient. Eliot stood by his window, watching the storm, and something within him stirred. Not curiosity, not intellect. Something deeper and ached to feel more than facts, more than calculations. He turned, walked to the crystal clock, and wound it once. The second he did, everything changed. The shop vanished. Eliot blinked and found himself standing in a vast field of golden light, where the air shimmered and flowers hummed in colors he had no names for. Above him, clouds moved like thoughts. Below, the grass pulsed softly, like a sleeping heartbeat. Where am I? He whispered. A voice answered not from the outside, but from within. You are where consciousness begins. It wasn't a dream. It wasn't death. He was aware more than he had ever been. Every blade of grass felt connected to him. He could hear the silence of the stars and the laughter of ants underground. But strangely, he also noticed he didn't know who he was. He remembered being Eliot, remembered his clocks, his shop, but that identity now felt like a shirt he had worn too long, comfortable, but not truly his. Am I awake? He asked the voice. You are more awake than ever, it replied. What you once called awake was survival mental alertness. But this is being. Suddenly, he was back in the shop, gasping. The crystal clock ticked softly. Only a second had passed. What was that? Eliot breathed. He couldn't sleep that night, and when he did, something new happened. He knew he was sleeping. Not in a dream, but in a strange middle space, watching thoughts drift by like clouds. He didn't control them, but he was separate from them, as if his awareness had become a lighthouse, simply watching the waves. In the days that followed, he began to see life differently. He still noticed patterns, sounds, and shadows like before. But now, he noticed the space between them, the silence between words, the breath between thoughts. He began to realize most people weren't truly awake. They reacted, they survived, but few were aware. Even he, until recently, had been living as a fast-thinking machine, and that was the turning point. One morning, as the sun rose like a whisper over Auravelle, Eliot met Mirana again. She appeared in his shop doorway, the crystal clock glowing faintly in her hands. You've begun, she said. Begun what? Begun the real journey, the one not of places, but of perception. He tilted his head. So all this time, I wasn't really conscious? Mirana smiled gently. You were conscious. Everyone is, even in sleep. But awareness is not like a candle in or off. It's like the ocean. Always there, but only sometimes still enough for you to see yourself in it. Eliot sat down, heart full and confused. I thought being alert quick, Sharpaz being conscious, Mirana replied. That's the mind. It helps you survive, yes. But consciousness is not survival. It's not speed or sharpness. It's depth. It is the knowing that you are, even when there's nothing to think, nothing to react to. Then what happens when we sleep? You don't disappear. You simply lose access to your instruments, your senses, your thoughts. But you, the awareness itself, remain. That's why sometimes you wake in dreams, because a sliver of that awareness rises. Eliot nodded slowly. So, consciousness is always on? Always. It is not present or absent, only intense or subtle. Like music you must listen closely to hear. That night, Eliot didn't wind a single clock. He sat in silence, not meditating, not focusing, just being. And for the first time in his life, he felt no need to do anything. He watched the thoughts come and go. He watched the idea of Eliot come and go. And still, something remained. A soft, steady knowing. I am. It wasn't a sentence. It wasn't even language. It was just a presence. A center. Unshakable. Quiet. It was like being a candle that had always been lit. But finally realizing it wasn't the wax, or the wick, or even the flame, it was the light. Word spread through Auravelle. Eliot's clocks began to change. Not in form, but in feeling. People would buy his clocks and find themselves strangely still. Some said they remembered forgotten dreams. Others said time felt slower, richer, when Eliot's clocks were nearby. Even the Queen visited. Eliot never spoke of Mirana, never claimed wisdom. But when people asked why his clocks were different, he said, "Because now I don't make clocks to measure time. I make them to remind you." Remind us of what? They would ask. That you are here. Not just alive, but aware. Years passed. Eliot grew older. His beard turned silver, but his eyes glowed like a boy who had just seen magic. One winter evening, as snowflakes danced like fairies outside his window, Eliot sat by the fire, the crystal clock beside him. It had stopped ticking long ago, but Eliot no longer needed it. He closed his eyes, not to sleep, but to listen. And there it was, the gentle hum beneath all things. The same hum he had heard in that golden field, the music of existence, of being. He smiled, not because he understood it all, but because he no longer needed to. Epilogue. Children still tell the tale of Eliot the clockmaker, whose clocks could calm even a crying dragon. Some say he learned magic from the moon. Others whisper that he never truly aged, because he had stepped outside of time. But those who really knew him knew the truth. Eliot didn't escape time. He simply remembered something we all forget. You're not alive because you think. You're not alive because your heart beats. You're alive because you know you are. And that knowing is the light within. Always on. Even when you sleep. Even when you forget. Waiting only for you to notice. If you like this video, please subscribe our channel to keep reminding yourself with our videos.